"You're not going to Harvard. Your place is here with your sister," my dad ordered. I grabbed my savings and vanished that night. 10 years later, they called begging, not knowing I was now a successful programmer they desperately needed. Story time. My sister, 2 years younger, had always been different. Not in a way that doctors could diagnose, but in a way that demanded constant attention. She needed someone to guide her, to protect her from the world's sharp edges. And apparently, that someone was me. Harvard was everything I'd worked for. Years of sleepless nights, scholarships, and sacrifices, all culminating in that acceptance letter. It was my ticket out of our small town, my chance to become something more than just a caretaker. But my dad's decree shattered that dream. That night, I packed a duffel bag with whatever clothes I could fit, grabbed the meager savings I'd stashed away from my part-time job, and disappeared. No note, no goodbye. Just a burning resentment and a desperate need to escape. The first few years were a blur of odd jobs and cheap motels. I worked construction, waited tables, anything to keep myself afloat. I changed my number, avoided social media, and became a ghost. The guilt gnawed at me, but the thought of returning, of giving up my newfound freedom, kept me moving forward. Then, slowly, things started to change. I landed a job as a junior programmer, a field I'd always been interested in. I devoured online courses, honed my skills, and climbed the corporate ladder. Years passed, marked by promotions, new cities, and a growing sense of accomplishment. I built a life for myself, a life far removed from the suffocating expectations of my family. I met people who valued me for my intellect and ambition, not for my ability to soothe my sister's anxieties. 10 years. 10 years since I left. Then one evening, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello." A woman's voice, hesitant and strained. Is this really you?" It was my mother. We need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "Your father, he's sick." My heart pounded in my chest. A mix of emotions, anger, guilt, sadness, washed over me. "What's wrong with him?" "Cancer," she whispered. "He doesn't have much time." A long silence stretched between us. "And your sister?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She's not doing well," my mother said. "She needs you. We both need you." They needed me. After all these years, after they'd pushed me away from my dreams, they needed me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I told my mother I'd think about it, and hung up. I sat there for hours, staring at the wall, replaying the events of the past decade in my head. Was I a monster for abandoning my family? Or was I justified in pursuing my own happiness? The next day, I booked a flight back home. Stepping off the plane, the familiar scent of the small town hit me like a punch to the gut. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. I rented a car and drove to my childhood home. The house was smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling, the yard overgrown. My mother answered the door, her face etched with worry lines. She pulled me into a hug, and I could feel her trembling. My father was in the living room, lying on a hospital bed. He looked frail and weak, a shadow of the man who had once been so strong and imposing. My sister was sitting beside him, holding his hand, her eyes vacant. He looked up as I entered the room. A flicker of surprise, then recognition, crossed his face. "You came," he said, his voice raspy. I nodded, unable to speak. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and awkward conversations. My father apologized for his past actions, admitting that he'd been wrong to hold me back. He said he'd been afraid of what would happen to my sister if I left, but he realized now that he'd only pushed me away. My sister didn't say much. She seemed lost in her own world, barely acknowledging my presence. I tried to talk to her, to connect with her, but it was like talking to a ghost. As my father's condition worsened, the weight of my family's expectations began to settle on my shoulders once again. My mother started hinting that I should stay, that my sister needed me. "She's not going to be able to cope without your father," she said one evening, her eyes pleading. "You're the only one who understands her." I knew what she was asking. She wanted me to give up my life again, to sacrifice my dreams for the sake of my family. But I couldn't do it. I'd already given up so much. My father passed away a week later. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with grieving relatives and tearful eulogies. I stood beside my sister, feeling numb. After the funeral, my mother sat me down in the living room. "What are you going to do now?" she asked, her voice heavy with expectation. "I'm going back to my life," I said, my voice firm. "I can't stay here." Her face fell. "But what about your sister? She needs you." "I can't be her caretaker anymore," I said. "She needs professional help. She needs to learn to be independent." My mother started to cry. "You're abandoning us again," she sobbed. "No, I'm not," I said. "I'm just choosing to live my own life. I'll always be there for you, but I can't sacrifice myself for your expectations." I helped them find a good therapist for my sister and made sure they were financially stable. I visited them often, but I made it clear that I wasn't going to move back. Leaving again was hard, but it was the right decision. I had a life to live, dreams to pursue, and I couldn't let my family's expectations hold me back any longer. Years later, my sister called me. She had a job, a small apartment, and a newfound sense of independence. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For leaving. For making me learn to take care of myself." Update 1. 2 years have passed since that phone call with my sister. I've been focusing on my career, and recently, I achieved a significant milestone. I was offered a senior position at a tech company in Silicon Valley. It's the kind of opportunity I've been working towards for years, and I'm excited about the challenges and growth it offers. However, just as things were falling into place, my mother called again. Her voice was strained, filled with a mix of anxiety and guilt. She told me that my sister was struggling again. The independence she had fought so hard for was slipping away, and she was relapsing into old patterns of dependence and isolation. "She refuses to see her therapist," my mother said, her voice cracking. "She says no one understands her except you." I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Had I done enough? Had I truly helped my sister? Or had I simply relieved myself of responsibility? I knew that going back would disrupt my life, my career, everything I had worked for. But I also knew that I couldn't ignore my sister's plea for help. "I'll come visit," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. When I arrived at their house, my sister looked even worse than I had imagined. She was withdrawn, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. She barely spoke, and when she did, her words were laced with self-doubt and despair. "I can't do it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not strong enough." I spent the next few days trying to reconnect with her, reminding her of her past successes, encouraging her to seek help. But it was like talking to a brick wall. She was convinced that she was a failure, that she would never be able to live a normal life. One evening, I found her rummaging through old photo albums. She stopped at a picture of us as children, laughing and playing in the backyard. "We were so happy then," she said, her voice wistful. "What happened to us?" I sat down beside her and put my arm around her. "We grew up," I said softly. "Life got complicated. But that doesn't mean we can't find happiness again." I realized then that my sister didn't just need a caretaker. She needed a connection, a reminder that she wasn't alone in her struggles. She needed to know that someone believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. Update 2. After several weeks of intensive therapy and emotional support, my sister slowly started to emerge from her despair. She began to open up, sharing her fears and anxieties. She started attending support groups, where she connected with others who understood what she was going through. I extended my stay, working remotely and dedicating my free time to helping my sister rebuild her life. I took her to appointments, went for walks with her, and simply listened when she needed to talk. One day, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't know what I would have done without you." I knew then that I had made the right decision. My career was important, but my family was more important. I couldn't abandon them, not when they needed me the most. As my sister continued to heal, I started to think about my own future. I realized that I didn't want to live my life solely for my career. I wanted to find a balance between my professional ambitions and my personal relationships. I talked to my company about the possibility of working remotely on a permanent basis. They were hesitant at first, but after seeing my commitment and productivity, they agreed. I decided to move back to my hometown, to be closer to my family. I found a small house near my mother and sister, and I started to build a new life for myself. It wasn't easy. Balancing work and family responsibilities was challenging, but I was happier than I had been in years. I was finally living a life that felt authentic, a life that was aligned with my values. My sister eventually found a job she loved, working with children with special needs. She thrived in her new role, finding purpose and fulfillment in helping others. We grew closer than ever, supporting each other through life's ups and downs. We learned to communicate openly and honestly, resolving conflicts with empathy and understanding. Update 3. 5 years have passed since I moved back home. My sister is now married and has a beautiful daughter. She's thriving in her career and has built a strong network of friends and support. Seeing her happy and fulfilled is the greatest reward I could ever ask for. I've also found love. I met someone at a local community event, and we connected instantly. She's kind, compassionate, and shares my values. We're planning our wedding for next spring. My career has also continued to flourish. I've been promoted several times and am now a senior executive at my company. I've also started mentoring young people in the community, sharing my experiences and helping them achieve their goals. Looking back, I realized that my father's words, "Your place is here, taking care of your sister," weren't a curse. They were a challenge. a challenge to redefine my priorities, to embrace my responsibilities, and to discover the true meaning of family. I still sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I had gone to Harvard, but I know that I wouldn't trade my current life for anything. I've learned that success isn't just about achieving professional goals. It's about building meaningful relationships, making a positive impact on the world, and finding happiness in the simple things. My journey has been full of twists and turns, but it's led me to where I am today, and I'm grateful for every step of the way. The begging never came. Instead, understanding, forgiveness, and ultimately, love did. It wasn't the path I envisioned, but it was the path I was meant to take. And in the end, that's all that truly matters.